All right, everybody, thank you for coming tonight. We got a lot of information from some real good sources tonight, so we want to get started so we can get you out of here at 8:30, or at least we'll try our best. Before I forget, Chip went to the fire safety meeting last night, and anybody that didn't make it, which sounded like most everybody didn't make it, but there's a new service called Ready Apache County that can call your home or your cell phone. Anyway, if you'd like to get a flyer, a little more information, Chip will have that after the meeting. And if you're not interested, you can leave. But if you are interested, stick around for a few minutes and Chip will fill you in on what you missed out on. Okay, we're starting tonight. We had talked about food storage, and if we can't go to the grocery store, one of the fastest ways to get nutrition is going to be sprouting, and Bill Pope is going to give you all some information on that. We'll start with Bill.
I broke my glasses about 5 minutes ago, so this may be a little awkward. So anyway, going to talk about sprouting tonight, and for those of you that have never sprouted, it's going to be very interesting. How many of you have sprouted before at all? Pretty good, wow. Pretty good chunk of people. Good. How many of you are currently sprouting? A lot fewer. Okay, yeah. Well, I really hope to have something for all of you tonight. For people that have never sprouted, for some of you that have some experience, and hopefully get all of you actually doing it, because we're presenting this as kind of a preparedness type of thing, but like almost any other preparedness thing, unless you've used it, unless you do it, you're not going to be prepared when the time comes. You're not going to have the necessary skills to do what you want to do, and you're going to go through a learning curve that's a lot easier to go through right now. So anyway, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to read you an excerpt from this little book that has absolutely nothing to do with sprouting. It's called The Art of Baking with Natural Yeast. But it's what I'm going to read to you tonight may be the very most important thing I tell you. And you may have some questions about it, and hopefully I can answer them if you do. But this explains a very, very important concept about all seed-type grains. She's talking in here about wheat because this is a baking book. But this applies to any seed that you'd put in the ground to grow, which includes every seed that you'd be sprouting. So I want to read this to you because it's put in such a way that I think that you'll understand it, and like I say, I think it's probably one of the most important concepts that you'll get through. It says, what is a seed? Wheat grains were designed to pass through the digestive tracts of grazing animals and then be planted on the other end in its own private fertilizer paddy. Wheat can survive digestion or be stored for years without losing its ability to become a plant. How does it do this? Wheat kernels, known as wheat berries, like I say, every seed this applies to every seed. They contain all the things that needed to start to grow. Inside the wheat berry, nutrients such as calcium, etc., I'm not going to read them all, are chained together and guarded like prisoners in a fortress by a little guy called phytic acid. How many of you heard of phytic acid? Okay, very few. Okay, so something to learn here. Phytic acid. His job is to hold on to every nutrient until an enzyme called phytase, the lookout in the watchtower, gives him the all clear. When the wheat is ground into flour, it blasts some of those chains and releases a few nutrients. We're not really talking about that. But phytic acid then, his job is to make sure that none of those nutrients are digested. So if we're eating grains of any kind that have not had that phytic acid somehow neutralized in them, two things happen. Number one, very few nutrients are absorbable from that grain because of the phytic acid binding them up. Not only that, once the phytic acid is in our system, it begins to bind up other nutrients that might have come from other sources as well. So getting rid of this phytic acid in the grains that we use is a very, very important concept. How do we get rid of phytic acid? We have to deal with phytase, the guy in watchtower. in this book, she talks about we use natural yeast to trick the phytase into thinking the seed has been planted. It's time for the nutrients to go to work. This is because the natural yeasts, etc., are moist and warm and begin the process just like a warm soil would do. So, this idea of phytic acid is such an important concept to nutrition and is one of the reasons, whether there's a lot of people that would agree with it or not, this book talks a lot about it, that so many people are gluten intolerant, have colitis, a lot of digestive problems, is because of the phytase that is in the wheat. I'm not going to talk a lot about that. Here is a natural yeast starter. My wife has taught classes on this, and for the last 2 mornings we've had what is essentially sourdough waffles for breakfast from our son, and it gets rid of the phytic acid. Sprouting gets rid of phytic acid because you're actually starting to grow the thing. You're going through this process that would naturally happen if you put it in the ground. So there are really only 2 good ways of getting rid of this phytic acid, this process she talks about. One of them is fermenting. Whether you have that concept in your mind about or not of fermenting, when you make bread and you put yeast in it and you raise the bread, that is fermenting. And there's a lot of other ferments that exist. Yeast is what ferments a mixture of grains, sugars, fruits into beer, wine, liquor. When we do bread, rise the bread, we're simply not giving it enough time to produce a significant amount of alcohol. But there's a lot of other fermented foods. There's a fantastic book. This guy is the king of fermenting foods. His name is Sandor Katz. And this book, Wild Fermentation, lots of good fermentation stuff. Excuse me? Oh, okay. The other way to accomplish this phytic acid problem is by sprouting the seeds, which is what would naturally happen in the ground anyway. This would include any seed that you would eat that would be planted and would grow. Some of these seeds, such as beans, peas, wheat, a few others, you don't really have to sprout them. This process of soaking them overnight, you don't ever want to put it in hot water, but if you start soaking them, you put it in warm water first. Soak it 6, 8, 12 hours, depending on the size of the seed. It thinks it's going to sprout and grow. The phytase neutralizes the phytic acid in it. So you've got a perfect storehouse here of nutrients that is naturally going to be healthy for you and have this gone. There's a real interesting book. It's called The Sprouting Book. I don't know, any of you heard of Ann Wigmore? A few of you do wheatgrass. She's the wheatgrass queen from a long time ago. Really a good book about, and if I keep track of time and yell at me if I'm going terribly long here. But she talks a lot about this, about the sprouting process itself. She talks about what they contain. The sprouts contain natural sources of vitamins, minerals, enzymes, amino acids, which are proteins. She calls them biogenic. They are alive and capable of transferring their energy to your body. Biogenic foods are foods that, when planted, will create new life. All raw, unsprouted seeds, beans, grains, nuts are biogenic. Other important foods, such as fresh vegetables and fruits, are considered bioactive. That is, while they are rich in all the good things, enzymes, etc., and contribute to your health, they are not in and of themselves capable of creating new life, therefore the 2 different terms. And then just what she tells, a brief history of herself. She says, some 35 years ago, I began my search for a food or combination of natural ingredients that could regenerate and rejuvenate my own ailing body. For years I had suffered of poor digestion, finally resulted in colitis, a form of intestinal irritation and bleeding. In addition, arthritis was beginning to stiffen my joints and my hair was turning gray. I found what I was looking for and much more, an edible plant food that would grow indoors in any climate and mature in a few days. And this is one of the big pluses of sprouts. If you want tomatoes, you're waiting 60, 80, 90, 120 days for tomatoes to mature. Tomatoes are wonderful. A lot of your garden stuff is wonderful, but virtually anything that you sprout is going to be in the condition you want to eat it in anywhere from 2 to 5 days. It's fast. You're getting the plant with the very most nutrition it's ever going to have in that compact form. She said, I myself have lived primarily on sprouted seeds, beans, grains, and nuts for more than 2 decades. Not only have I healed my body of colitis and arthritis following such a regimen, but I have also achieved a greater level of vitality and health than I had even as a child. And I am no child at 77 years old. And even my hair has returned to its natural brown color. She's got quite a story, and she's an interesting lady. We know that we can soak these things just overnight, some of them, if we're going to cook them and eat them. Wheat, dried beans, dried peas, and in fact, all of your beans, I mean the pinto beans, any of it really should be soaked overnight before you cook it. It will release that phytic acid in it and be much, much more healthy for you. Far more nutritionally superior. But also any of the beans, any of the things that you would normally just soak and then cook, you can also sprout. And once they've actually sprouted and have even just a small sprout on it, anywhere from 1/2 inch to 1 inch on the bigger seeds, that's all the bigger sprout that you want, they will have hundreds of times more nutrients in them than they will just soaked overnight. Okay, so try to wrap it up here. Why sprout? It's fast. It takes 2 to 5 days as opposed to growing a crop of vegetables that takes 45 to 90 days. Superior nutrition, amino acids, vitamins, fiber, proteins, carbohydrates, all produced in 2 to 5 days in those sprouts. Do it on your countertop, any time of the year, in any weather. A cup of sprouts added to your diet every day will heal your body of many health issues. So, that's why. How to sprout. And there's really, sprouting can be extremely simpler. You can make it a little complicated, but it's very hard to make it very dang complicated. What I use, primarily, we've had some of these for years and years. These 2 little things, this is a base, this sets on it. You put your seeds in, after they've been soaked, you put your seeds in here, cover it with another one, and you can stack these way high. They're not expensive. I can't remember what a set of 3 of them costs. $20, I don't remember exactly. These little trays, I just barely got these, but they're a little more versatile. I like them. They have a divider in it, so you can divide it in half. You can start, for instance, if there's just a couple of you can start 2 days apart in it and have 2 days here, 2 days here, and so you can rotate in one thing and you're not making a ton. Works super, super good. Same concept though, set on a base, have a top. Another way to do it, Ann Wigmore in her book talks about doing it in gallon bottles. I can't imagine. I started some in half-gallon bottles just to try it. It's unwieldy even in a half-gallon bottle. But these caps are $10 for a set of 3 of them. I just got some on Amazon. You can soak your seeds right in the bottle, water through the top, rinse it. One very, very important thing, and I'll get to that a little more detailed in just a minute, is the actual process that you go through of making sure you have a good, healthy sprout and that you don't have any problems when it grows. Here's, some of you ladies have probably done this at one place or another. This is just plastic. They use it to do, I don't know, needlepoint. Right, exactly. Cut around when it fits into your wide mouth lid, screw it on your bottle, then it does exactly the same thing as these $10 ones for about 5 cents. Another way to do it is this little screen mesh type of material, a rubber band. I mean, if you've got a quart bottle and something that you can drain water through, you can sprout. So that's the basic paraphernalia for it. There's not a lot of complicated paraphernalia. Okay, thank you. So we talked about how to sprout. Okay, trace bottles, you soak your seeds regardless of what they are. I always soak mine overnight regardless of the size of seed. I put it on the evening, the next morning I rinse it, put it in my trays. So, but some of the seeds you can soak less if you really want to. Large seed, then you start to sprout it. The larger seeds, and the thing is, a lot of these mixes, and you can come up later and look at some of these mixes that I have, some of them has large and small seeds together in it, which is a problem. Because basically the large seeds sprout a lot faster and you don't want a real long sprout on it. So really it's best to keep your large seeds and your small seeds separate, which will at the very end you can come up and see what I've done here. But so that can be a problem if you're buying pre-made mixes. But you sprout the large seeds anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 days. You get a sprout that's anywhere from 1/2 to 3/4 to an inch long. It's ready to eat. Your smaller ones, like your alfalfa, that sort of thing, these take about 4 days. And what I generally do, today's the 4th day on this right here. But generally speaking, I let it sprout for 4 days, and then on the 5th day I'll put it out in the sun a little while, which I did today, just to start some chlorophyll in the leaves, because the chlorophyll is really good for you too. Let's see. To store the seeds, one other very important thing as you're doing this, regardless of the method you use, you need to rinse them very well twice a day. If you don't, they will start to sour and spoil on you. So morning and evening during this sprouting cycle, rinse them well. Not just flush a little water over them. I mean, get some water on it and rinse them. And then drain them super good. You don't want them setting in water. We talked a little bit about storing seeds to sprout last week when we had a little meeting. If you store seeds for just a short time, if you store sprouting seeds and you're buying them from a store and they're in a deal like this, leave them in it. If you want to throw them in the freezer, fine. That's generally what I do. They last real good that way. If you're going to do long-term storage though, you want to mix your seeds with a small amount of what's called diatomaceous earth. I don't know if all of you have heard that. That keeps vermin out of it, but it doesn't remove the oxygen. It's very important to keep these seeds viable that they're surrounded with oxygen. If you put oxygen absorbers in it with them, which a lot of people do with wheat, which is great, it keeps the weevils out, but it kills the germ of it and they won't sprout. So if you're wanting to keep wheat long-term to sprout, or any other sprouting seeds, diatomaceous earth, and then if you're going to keep it real long-term, every year or so, take a couple of buckets, pour them back and forth to re-oxygenate it, and that'll make your sprouting seeds last much, much longer. Let's see. Afterwards, if you want to ask me some questions about where to get seeds, etc., I've got some sources. And afterwards, I've got samples here and love to have you look around, ask questions, whatever you want. But thank you very much. Appreciate the time.